Introducing Punchbowl News. From Anna Palmer, Jake Sherman, and John Bresnahan. News about the people who matter, for the people who matter. Join the community at punchbowl.news.
Well, good Tuesday morning. I'm Anna Palmer, CEO and a founder of Punchbowl News. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for our first Punchbowl News pop-up conversation of 2022. We are going to be joined shortly by Senator Todd Young, the Republican of Indiana, to talk about American competitiveness in the world, the latest on USICA, and much more. A big thank you to Micron for partnering with us to make this event possible. After our conversation with Senator Young, I'll be joined by Manish Bhatia, Executive Vice President of Global Operation for Micron, for a fireside chat. Just a reminder to please follow us on social media on all platforms at Punchbowl News, and feel free to share about today's conversation using that handle. And with that, let's get started and welcome Senator Young to the virtual stage. Senator, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Anna. Thanks for having me.
Well, before we get to the conversation of the day, we have a few news of the day questions for you. In Punchbowl News AM, we had some news that the Biden administration is planning on briefing congressional staffers about the deteriorating situation in the Ukraine today. You are a graduate of the Naval Academy and a former Marine officer, a leading voice on Capitol Hill on foreign policy matters, with a seat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. So I wanted to come to you first with this question. Do you think President Joe Biden should send U.S. troops to Eastern Europe?
Without delay. I think whatever can be done to establish deterrence needs to be done in short order. It's unclear because Vladimir Putin is very good at being unclear and unpredictable when an invasion might occur. And to the extent we can, arm the Ukrainians to deter such an invasion, and B, position our forces in neighboring countries, allied countries, to lend further deterrence, I think that is prudent rather than waiting until after the fact.
There's been some calls to do some preemptive sanctions on Russia. Is that something you might support? And if so, do you think these sanctions would actually deter Putin from moving forward?
Well, I think it's important that we take reciprocal actions to the aggressive actions of Vladimir Putin. So I would certainly regard marching tens of thousands of troops through Belarus and onto the border of Ukraine as an aggressive action, and some sort of reciprocal actions do indeed need to be taken. So sanctions would be appropriate. I wouldn't exhaust all sanctions, though, at this point, because, of course, we need to be able to incrementally heighten sanctions and other reciprocal actions based on escalation from Vladimir Putin.
I want to shift gears a little bit, quite a bit. You're also a member of the bipartisan group in the Senate that's trying to forge a pathway forward on changes to the electoral count of 1887, among other voting rights changes. Can you give us any update on where those talks stand?
Sure. They've actually advanced quite far. It's recognized by Republican and Democrat senators alike that the Electoral Count Act is vague and certainly needs to be tightened up in the wake of the post-election violence we had after the last presidential. And we want to avoid any sort of challenges in the future. So the way we can most directly address that is identify those vague spots in the law, as we have done, to work together and try and come up with sensible ways to avoid any ambiguity moving forward. And we're really at the putting pen to paper point. Senator Collins has shown great leadership here. Senator Tillis, Senator Manchin, Senator Sinema, and others, and we've identified all the areas. We've identified senators to work on particular areas. I also know that we have Senator Blunt and Klobuchar, who have indicated that separately and importantly, through the Rules Committee, they'll be holding hearings on the Electoral Count Act and engage in a separate initiative to try and improve this law. So I think at some point we'll meet our different ideas, come up with some sort of reconciled bill. This is a prediction, not something that's in the process yet, and deliver something to our leadership that can be brought to the floor and hopefully ultimately delivered to the president to sign into law. So this doesn't seem like a highly contested or contestable topic. Everyone seemingly agrees it needs to be done. And hopefully the American people will recognize that when it comes to really important matters, we're able to come together.
I want to ask you one other quick question. I know you have some news this morning with the Olympics in Beijing coming up. You were launching what you're calling 10 days of Beijing behaving badly. Can you talk about what that is and what your goal is there?
Yeah, it's sort of a fun hashtag Beijing behaving badly, but it's a very serious topic. In just a few days, we're going to see the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics kicking off, and no doubt Xi Jinping and his oppressive communist regime hope to use this to further elevate his regime in the eyes of the world and frankly to normalize much of their behavior. And while we should celebrate and cheer for our athletes, which I of course will be doing, I think it's appropriate that there's a diplomatic boycott. We also shouldn't let this opportunity be wasted from a diplomatic standpoint, though, in terms of highlighting many of the egregious human rights abuses, modern day slavery, an Orwellian surveillance state that the Chinese Communist Party has worked on perfecting in recent years. Its encroachments on neighboring territory, its seizure of Hong Kong. The list goes on and on. So I'll be highlighting through a series of social media tweets many of these different violations of human rights, international norms, and just things that are inconsistent with what civilized countries should be doing.
All right, let's shift to the conversation of the day, American competitiveness. Can you talk a little bit about what government incentives are needed to ensure America's place on the world stage?
Sure. There of course are a number of them. Appropriate roles for government in ensuring that we grow our economy faster so that we have the wherewithal to defend our way of life, which includes military investments. So those have long been understood to include infrastructure, basic research, national security investments, of course, investments in our people, our worker training, and those sophisticated skill sets that will be needed to help catalyze and maintain a modern economy's growth. These are some areas of emphasis of my Endless Frontier Act, which I've worked with Democrats on, and also known as U.S. Innovation and Competition Act, that will soon be coming before the U.S. Senate once again after we're able to reconcile it with a House work product. We've seen a big delay in terms of consideration of this legislation since it passed out of the Senate with 68 votes in a bipartisan fashion early last summer. And it's really my strong hope that we're not going to get distracted this time, and the Democratic leadership in both the House and the Senate will see this thing across the goal line. So those are some of the categories of investment that we should be looking at, and the USICA is perhaps the most bold and comprehensive China competitiveness legislation that our country has ever passed.
Speaking of that, obviously a big week with the speaker looking to put out the House version of the bill that's been stalled for quite a while. Can you describe some of the major fault lines between the Senate and the House here? What's caused the delay, and is there anything that you think you can't support? It needs to be in here that might not be in that House version.
Sure. Trying to identify the fault lines an imprecise art when you don't go through a regular committee process and discover through regular order where those fault lines exist. But I really feel like the biggest stumbling block to getting this done has just been distraction. It's been the focus by Democratic leadership, by the White House, on the Build Back Better legislation, which hopefully has run its course, but that crowded out focus on this core national security issue. I don't want to lament that too much or fixate on that, because now we're moving forward once again, but that's really what led to the delay. There have been some substantive and I think principal disagreements as it relates to trade. But I'd remind my House Democratic colleagues that the trade title of the Senate version of the legislation passed with 91 votes for opposing. So there was strong bipartisan support for that title. Aside from that, there are some disagreements about exactly how much resourcing should go to research or education. But I think we're pretty much over the target in finding some common ground. Most important thing, though, and the speaker understands this based on her recent announcements, is to produce a work product so that we can sit down in a conference committee and reconcile those differences.
Just to talk about that, I know you've been kind of pushing this along, trying to find the moment for both Democrats and Republicans to work on this issue. What is the timeline that you expect? And it sounds like you do expect a conference to happen. So are we talking about this spring, or do you think it could go into the summer or the fall?
I would certainly hope that we can get this done by Memorial Day. I would say in the next few months, we want to get this done. But in very short order, I would hope, and this seems to be happening, that the House would produce its work product so that that conference process can begin. Consultation with all of my members can occur, and maybe we'll surprise the American people and get this done even more quickly than I would predict. Every day we wait is a day that our fab makers, for example, and Micron, who has supported this event, I'm really appreciative of their and other companies' efforts to try and ensure that the United States has domestic capacity for chip production. That is essential as we try and retrench some of our critical national security implicating supply lines. And the longer we wait to incentivize the reshoring of these fabrication plants of advanced microprocessors, that leads our country to be more vulnerable. And to really bring it close to home, it makes the families who are dependent on auto fabrication in the state of Indiana nervous. Those communities are vulnerable. Those who work in Crane, Indiana at the naval base and put together some of our critical national security components that require high-end chips, they too are vulnerable. So this really resonates across the heartland, not just from a strictly national security standpoint, but also an industrial-based standpoint.
Yeah, let's drill down on that a little bit. There's been a ton of coverage in the news about semiconductors and how the industry needs help to boost U.S. chip manufacturing. You kind of laid that out a bit in terms of that capacity. A lot of announcements about companies, saying they're going to build manufacturing plants here. They need to increase it. Is there need for more government intervention, or does USICA get that job done with its investments, or are there other things down the line that we might need to expect in, 2030, 2040, 2050?
Well, I would hope that congressional action would be informed by the administration's, I would say, appropriate executive orders calling for various cross-cutting studies of our supply chain challenges, trying to diagnose where those vulnerabilities exist, in what sectors, and what tools from a public policy standpoint might need to be brought to bear in order to incentivize reshoring or to diversify our supply chain into trusted countries. But we shouldn't act too impulsively. We have not done so as it relates to our computer chips. We know there's a vulnerability there. We know that the United States is 100% dependent on our highest end chips on other countries. We also know that the Europeans, South Koreans, and other countries are incentivizing fabricators into their country. So if we want to be in this game, if we want to compete for these fabrication plants and the resilience that comes with having them located within the borders of the continental United States, then we, of course, need to incentivize their location in places like the industrial Midwest.
As you look to American competitiveness, another issue that is, we constantly hear about is the issue facing businesses around workforce challenges and having people with the technical skills needed to do these types of jobs. What more do you think needs to be done on that front? This is kind of top of mind when you look at unemployment rates, but also just companies who might want to actually do what you're talking about, have new plants, but actually have the workers that are needed to kind of get into those jobs.
Oh, goodness. I can think of a lot of things. I'll try and go through very quickly a punch list of some of the things that come to mind. I would start with preparation of our young people, right? Whether it's pre-K through 12, we need to ensure that people have the foundation in STEM fields so that they can graduate into whether it's a technician role or a higher end developmental role when it comes to our core technologies, so that as we move into what some are calling the fourth industrial revolution, everyone in our economy feels like they can play a meaningful part in our coming growth. But beyond those developmental stages, we need to continue to get better at skilling and then reskilling our workers. And we've seen the private sector step up in recognition of their important role to play. The federal government will continue to pay for much of this skilling and reskilling, though. It needs to be informed by the needs of the market in a more precise way than we have in the past. One tool to allow that, and we need to think creatively, are income share agreements, which essentially allow either a third party or an employer to pay for the training of a worker. That person will get a debt-free education, and then upon completing the course of study and securing a good paying job, the worker would then pay back whoever funded their education. This is a new and growing model to help people acquire skills at coding academies, as I have seen in Indiana, or even to receive an electrical engineering doctorate degree from Purdue University. So this is a really exciting application. I do have some legislation along with Senator Mark Warner to ensure that our workers are protected legally from any adverse terms that may be included in these agreements. But this is the sort of creativity we need to bring to bear from a public policy standpoint to really ensure that everyone, as I said before, is brought along at a time when a lot of people feel underutilized and underappreciated. If we can harness the talent of rank and file Americans, I really believe we can outgrow and out-innovate other countries. And that, of course, has very important national security implications, especially as you think about our strategic competition with China.
One last question on that, though. I mean, you kind of talk about the reskilling, what we can be doing domestically, but what role does immigration reform have on these and the workforce needs that we're talking about here?
Well, I'm going to lean into this one. I think it has an essential role to play. If you look at various job categories where we need workers, we need people with the requisite skills and the desire to come to the United States and apply those skills. That will help our economy grow. We also know that those who hail from other countries and decide to make the United States home have a much higher rate of business creation. And this is essential if we're going to grow the economy. And in my lifetime, we've seen all net new job creation in the United States occur from new firms and young firms, not existing incumbent firm growth. So the key to economic growth is to try and facilitate more business creation and survival into year 4 or 5. And we can do that through immigration reform. So we need to do it smartly in order to, once again, ensure that those new workers aren't competing with our existing workers for jobs, competing for wages and salaries. And this is how we'll build majority support for immigration reform. I should add that realistically, as a matter of politics, and I think a matter of good policy, any immigration reform proposals are going to have to be paired with border security measures to get it done.
All right. With that, Senator Young, thank you so much for your time this morning. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We appreciate it. Hope you have a great rest of your week. And now I'd like to welcome Manish Bhatia, Executive Vice President of Global Operations for Micron, for our fireside chat. Manish, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks so much, Anna. Happy to be here with you.
Well, to start the conversation, we obviously just heard a lot from Senator Young, so we'll kind of unpack that. But I wanted to start, if you can kind of give us that 30,000-foot view of Micron, its role in the kind of American workforce, and where you all are really focused on right now.
Sure. Thanks, Anna. So Micron is the 4th largest semiconductor company in the world. We're the 2nd largest in the United States. We were founded in Boise, Idaho 43 years ago, and have delivered 47,000 patents to the global scientific community and the industry over our long heritage. Micron, we're a memory chip maker, so we make chips for memory and storage. And just to kind of give a little bit of context for you and the viewers, the semiconductor industry is split into various different segments. You can think about logic, which are companies like Intel manufacture microprocessors. There's segments like analog, which you hear a lot about these days. Those are chips like power management integrated circuits, which are used, and other sensor technologies that are used in many different products that we use. And then there's memory and storage. DRAM memory, which is used very close to processing to be able to accelerate the speed of processing. And then there's storage, which is obviously NAND flash storage that's in your iPhone, it's in your personal computer, to be able to hold data even while the power is off. So these are some of the segments. And memory and storage has really grown over the last 2 decades. 20 years ago, memory and storage were 10% of the global semiconductor industry by revenue. And today, that number has grown to 30%. So it's over the last 20 years. So, and that's while the semiconductor industry has doubled in total revenue. So 6x growth in the memory industry over that time. And that's really the drivers behind that have been, kind of the trends that we're seeing today that are going to fuel the future. You've got artificial intelligence, 5G, autonomous, all of those are data hungry technologies. And every time you hear about any of those, you think need for more memory and more storage. And that's Micron. And we're very proud to be an American company, but we're also very proud to be leading the global industry against some really strong competition in terms of our technology capability. We have the world's most advanced technology, both for DRAM and for NAND. And we are very excited to be able to continue that leadership and expect to be able to continue that into the next decade and beyond, with an announcement that we made late last year of a plan to spend $150 billion on manufacturing and research and development globally over the next decade to maintain that leadership and invest in capacity to be able to meet the demands for the future.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about that. So that's the big amount of $150 billion in expansion and R&D to try to kind of meet that demand for memory that you really just laid out there, and how that's going to kind of expand over time. Where's that $150 billion going? What can you expect from it? Kind of why was that so important for Micron to make that kind of an investment?
Well, I think the announcement, Anna, was really about expressing confidence in the demand for memory and storage over the long term. As I mentioned, all of these technology trends continue to be very robust, and we can just, what we see today, how memory and storage are becoming even more integral, even more valuable components of every single computing paradigm of the future. It's the big data era, right? It's all about access to larger and larger data sets to be able to glean insights that can help us, make faster decisions, make better decisions, and just change the way we work and live. And then the other aspect was our ability to not just have achieved leadership in technology capability, but to be able to project forward. That leadership allows us to invest with confidence. And in order to meet the demand trends, we'll be investing that money across three primary areas. First would be research and development to maintain our leadership. And a lot of that investment happening here in the United States. Our Boise research and development facility is perhaps the most advanced memory research and development facility anywhere in the world. And then we'll also be spending on manufacturing capacity, or fabs, as Senator Young was explaining. Across our global footprint, we currently have fab activity here in the United States, in Boise, as I mentioned, and in Manassas, Virginia, as well as in Singapore, Japan, and Taiwan. And so our investments would be in those locations. And then we also have assembly and test capability for packaging our end products for our customers, and some portion of the capital will be spent in those areas as we look to make sure we have a resilient supply chain to be able to meet the demands for our customers.
So we heard Senator Young talk a lot about USICA, CHIPS, the need for investment in the semiconductor space. Can you talk about the impact that legislation would have on a company like Micron today, and maybe kind of projected into the future to 2030?
Well, I want to thank Senator Young and the rest of his co-sponsors in Capitol Hill. We're pleased to see bipartisan support for the CHIPS Act, as well as sponsorship and leadership from the administration, from President Biden and Secretary Raimondo. And looking forward, we're seeing hopefully some progress over the last week or two, as the senator mentioned, on getting to a point where the CHIPS Act, which would provide funding for new fab facilities, as well as research and development, and some for advanced packaging, where all of that funding can come together. And in addition to that, there also is a bill in the House called the FABS Act, which would create an investment tax credit for manufacturing investments here in the United States. And we think both of these are essential elements to really be able to regain competitiveness for the United States, to be able to allow domestic manufacturing to flourish. As the senator mentioned, there are enormous subsidies being given to our competitors in Asia, and other countries have been have recognized the value of domestic semiconductor manufacturing at scale 20 years ago. So we are 20 years behind, really, and in terms of investing in advanced semiconductor manufacturing capability. And so the ecosystems to support these massive scale fabrication facilities, each of which cost approaching $20 billion. Those ecosystems have really sprung up primarily in Asia over the last 2 decades. And so we're not going to fix this problem overnight. It's going to take investment. The CHIPS Act is a good start, but CHIPS and this refundable investment tax credit that's been proposed together will really be able to allow investments to be made across multiple segments in the industry, and with all the producers to be able to invest with confidence for the long term.
We are almost out of time, Manish, but I did want to ask you, we spoke with the senator who kind of had extended remarks about workforce skilling, reskilling, immigration reform. On the business side of things, as you look at the landscape of America's workforce as an employer, what do you think needs to be done to make sure businesses have that workforce that they need in order to remain competitive?
Yeah, well, the war for talent, Anna, has never been greater right now across all industries, but certainly across technology industries and within the semiconductor industry. And the language of the future really is data. And so, as Senator Young mentioned, it starts with K through 12 STEM education and making sure everyone is comfortable with mathematics and data and statistics and coding and all the elements that come together. In our manufacturing facilities, these multi, as I mentioned, approaching $20 billion for one facility, 5,000 workers on site. All of them will need to be really fluent in terms of that language, that statistical language, to be able to optimize our manufacturing operations. Semiconductor manufacturing is probably the most complicated manufacturing process in the world. There's never been a more value-added manufacturing process in the history of the world than semiconductors. We take sand as our primary raw material, and with all this incredible engineering and precision equipment and specialty materials, we turn it into the electronics that power our world. And in order to manufacture those, it's not about being able to work just with your hands. You have to really understand the complex interactions between the equipment and the materials. And we're deploying advanced artificial intelligence and machine learning in all of our fabrication facilities around the world in a data-first approach. And we need everyone to be able to contribute to that model.
All right. With that, thank you so much for your time this morning. We really appreciate it. And a big thank you to Micron for making this conversation possible. We always appreciate you joining us on the live stream this morning. We are actually going to be back February 9th at 9 a.m. with Representative Ro Khanna to talk about cybersecurity, and in person, our first in person of the 2022 editorial series at the Roost on Capitol Hill on February 16th. With Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo. You can sign up for both of those events at our event hub on our website, punchbowl.news. Have a great day and stay safe.